Hello, and thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We are live from our studios in Kokomimle on digital address GA0992539. Our top stories this hour: Ghana Education Service denies responsibility after another student dies after he was supposedly administered drugs by some teachers. More, as his mother insists school authorities must take responsibility. A nationwide debate continues over whether or not schools partially open should be shut. Ban of used vehicles to start. Vehicle dealers kick against government's plans to ban used vehicles. We are live with them in studio as we hear their concerns. Deputy MASLOC CEO Hajia Abibata Mahama Zakaria says she's ready to appear before Shraj to fight off claims she engaged in vote buying in the just-ended MPP primaries. We're live on your digital TV, also on DSTV channel 421, GoTV 144, and on YouTube. Send your thoughts to 0540 109 009. Thanks again for your company on The Pulse. I'm Arba Kumsin, sitting in for your regular host, Gifty Ando Apia. We start off with the Deputy MASLOC CEO, Hajia Abibata Mahama Zakaria, who's this afternoon saying she's ready to appear before Shraj to fight off claims she engaged in vote buying in the just-ended MPP primaries. Investigative agency Corruption Watch says it had uncovered Mrs. Zakaria engaged in doling out state funds to delegates to earn their votes. She's been speaking to JoyNews' Joseph Akable, insisting she did no wrong.
And Yendi is not different from any of the constituencies. They are Ghanaians just like other people in the other constituencies. And Yendi has gotten 35 groups. So if you are talking about 117 groups in Tamale Central being the highest and Yendi having benefited 35 groups, I don't really see any problem with that.
And if you watch the video, I mean, for those who, the video even went viral before the story itself came out, and you see people moving money onto a table, and one would ask, is that the best way MASLOC can be distributing such loans? I mean, it clearly doesn't look good, money being put on the table and sharing to people.
That has always been our practice. And again, that wasn't the first time that MASLOC had distributed money to people at such in such a manner. It was recently that we launched our digital platform. So as at the time I went to Yendi, we're mopping up. I don't think in the future MASLOC would do a thing like that, but that has always been our practice. Every constituency that we have done disbursement, this is the way we do it. And I will take the opportunity to explain the process to you. Like I said, 25 people are in a group. So when they apply as a group, we have 3 leaders for the group. We have the chairman, the secretary, and the treasurer. So those are the people that more or less they are the intermediaries for the group. So whatever processes that is done, every member of the group's name is captured. The details are captured. So on the day of the disbursement, what happens is that the 3 groups per each group, they will go to the bank with MASLOC officials and they would withdraw the money to the function. Everybody is present. They go through the list, mention the name, the person is verified with the ID card and the necessary details before the money is given out. That is to ensure transparency. So when such things are being done, I'm talking about 750 beneficiaries. Definitely the money will be huge. They cannot carry the money on foot. The money has to be in a car. And the allegation was that I put the money in my car. That car, I don't even know. As I speak to you, I don't know whose car it was. What I know was that the money was brought to the venue, and that is the practice. And looking at the number, definitely the money will be huge. So for me, I don't think that MASLOC, we went against our normal procedure. And I am the kind of person that I will never bend any rules. You can testify from my colleague, and then my boss, the management, and the board. and the staff of MASLOC that I am the kind that will never bend any rules to suit anybody, let alone myself. I am very principled, and I adhere to the principles and procedures of MASLOC.
And so the point is also made about the increase in the groups.
Sure.
What specific role as a leader at MASLOC do you play in relation to the allocation of the funds and the groups, and whether or not to increase the group allocations?
Like I said already, usually people apply to MASLOC, and when they apply, they go through due diligence to ensure that whatever is needed, the requirements are met before they even work on them. I am not a party to the approval process, but like I said, what I do as a deputy CEO, I am also a deputy CEO in charge of operations, and basically all the regions are under me. So but we work in such a way that we are 2 deputies. So I am in charge of the northern sector. My other colleague is in charge of the southern sector. That's Madam Alberta Ifia Akutu. So usually what we do is that when there's any disbursement that a deputy CEO has to go, we go with the staff of MASLOC. We have the regional manager and the staff. So even the day of the disbursement, they were all there. But maybe because I was the lead person, they also gave their speeches. Even before any disbursement is done, they explained the processes to the beneficiaries in terms of the interest rate and how they are going to pay back and all of that. Those speeches were said before I even came in. So I didn't have any particular role in the approving processes. And for example, if the issue is that 35 groups were sent to Yendi, assuming without admitting that I even said I influenced 35 groups to Yendi constituency. Yendi constituency, as I mentioned already, is not the constituency that has the highest beneficiaries in the northern region. For example, I mentioned Tamale Central having 117 groups. Tamale South having 69 groups, Tamale North having 56 groups. They are all higher than 35 groups. So for me, those constituencies that benefited from the scheme, they were not going for primaries. They are not my constituencies. So what influence did I have in such constituencies? And why is it that they would say that the 35 groups, I sent it there to influence delegates? In any case, I lost the election narrowly with 34 votes. The MASLOC intervention did not have any impact on my election. What impact could it have had just some few weeks to the primaries? Whatever we did it for the sake of the people, the beneficiaries, and nothing to do with the primaries. Like I said, out of 750 beneficiaries, if less than 100 people are delegates, what impact will it have for me as a person? So my being there wasn't a personal gain, but a gain for the constituency and not myself.
So to be clear, you maintain that you did not engage in vote buying, and have you communicated this to the group that carried out this particular investigation, and what kind of response have you obtained?
To begin with, they didn't carry out any investigation. When I read that they did undercover investigation, I laughed. This was a public gathering with media present. So why would I do something publicly when I know it is wrong? The media people that were there, corruption war didn't bring the media people. MASLOC invited the media, and it was done publicly. Whatever statement I said was public. So what is this issue about undercover investigation? Something that was on Facebook. People took pictures, people took speeches, and it was all over the place, even before the primaries. And then you tell me that you do undercover investigation. Is that how undercover investigations are done in Ghana? We are all in Ghana, and we know what Anas Amriel does. This is not undercover investigation. It was public. Anybody at all could have sat in the office and taken the pictures or downloaded the speech that I had. So that impression, again, is a false impression. It wasn't any undercover investigation because it was a public gathering. And how would I even involve in vote buying when there are loans? As I speak to you, the people that were given the loans have started repaying. So how does it tend to be vote buying? When you sell something to someone, do you take it back? That is the impression, because if I buy something from you, I have bought it and it is mine. I don't have to pay back. So if people have taken loans and they are paying back, how is it termed as vote buying? I am very, very disappointed with that tag saying vote buying. This was something that was done in May, and our election was in June. How could it be vote buying? And what I know about vote buying, we are all in Ghana. Maybe, for example, a day to the election, some few days to the election, people give money to delegates or give other things to delegates. I did not engage in any of that. So this tag of me involving in vote buying is unfortunate. And it cannot be termed as vote buying, because a loan cannot be termed as vote buying when the people have even started repaying.
And so far, have you been contacted by any, do you know whether any investigative agency is looking into this matter? And you made a point that you are someone who doesn't bend the rules. I mean, you should be willing to assist any such probe if it indeed takes off.
Yes, I'm willing to avail myself to any investigative body. But again, I also saw some posts on Joy, I don't know whether it was Joy Online, someone sent it to me, that CDD to petition Shraj to look into corruption allegations. That heading is deceptive in the sense that I haven't involved in any corruption. I went there to do my work as an official from MASLOC, and that is the due process. I haven't bent any rules. I am not the kind that will bend rules. Everybody in MASLOC will tell you that I will not bend any rule. So if the heading is to investigate corruption allegations against me, it is very deceptive, and it's unfortunate because I haven't involved in any corruption. The money was given to people publicly, and that is our procedure. I didn't go against any procedure, and the people are repaying. So the point should be made that I haven't involved in any wrongdoing, I haven't involved in any vote buying, and I never admitted to being engaged in vote buying as it was stated.
You're watching The Pulse. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back. You're welcome back to The Pulse. I'm Araba Kumsa. Now, the Ghana Christian Council has inaugurated a 21-member eminent persons group to serve as the Election 2020 proactive peace-building platform. The group, which is made up of the Catholic Bishops' Conference, the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, the Muslim Fraternity, and other religious groups, is, among others, tasked to engage democratic stakeholders and political parties, security agencies, the Electoral Commission, as well as mediate and intervene in resolving electoral disputes before, during, and after the 2020 elections. While speaking during a short ceremony, Chairman of the Eminent Persons Group, Right Reverend Professor Joseph Obriyabua Mante, urged political parties and Ghanaians to desist from tribal politics.
We will therefore commit ourselves to effective monitoring systems that will engage the powers that be to make sure that in the name of God, our elections are truly fair and transparent and just. We will therefore engage the political leaders, the media, the security agencies, the Electoral Commission, ordinary citizens, traditional leaders, in a humble but very serious manner, all with the intention of making sure that we have free, fair, and just elections void of any intimidation or violence. I have observed some 4 basic demonic traits in Ghana's politics that must be exorcised. We may in future make time to break them down and expatiate on them more carefully, but for the sake of time, I will only touch on them briefly. They are one, the demon of wishing the downfall of a ruling party just to gain political points. We all should note that any time this demonic trait is triggered, we all lose as a country. We never progress in our development as a country in that kind of environment. This spirit of praying that any government in power will not do well must be exercised. Number two, the demon of ethnic or tribal polarization. There are people in this country who sometimes give the impression that some tribes are more Ghanaian than others. The worst thing is that they use it politically during election period. This again is a demon that must be exercised. This position can be held by either the ruling government or opposition parties. It can be concocted and exaggerated by the opposition, or it can be fooled by the government in power. Ghana does not belong to any particular ethnic or tribal group. It belongs to all of us. Dagombes, Kusasis, Bunos, Asantis, Evers, Fantis, Kwawus, Achims, Ekwapims, etc., etc. We are all one people. The politics of tribal polarization during electioneering campaign is demonic and it must be stopped immediately and exorcised from our growing democracy. Number three, the demon of uncultured and hate speech and lies. Just because of elections, people insult other people's character and personalities. Some of them very young men and women, small boys and girls, insulting others who are far older than them, who can even become their fathers and mothers. Sometimes one wonders who nurtured such people. This attitude is a disgrace in Ghana's politics and it must be eschewed. Do we want to teach the younger generation that politics is a dirty game? Is that what we want to leave our children with? This is a shame and a demon that must be exorcised. Demon number four, the demon of violence and abuse of power. There are people who talk violence and act violent. They exhibit these characteristics during electioneering campaigns. Sometimes their leaders acquiesce and support them by not saying anything. When those who speak and act violently are supported by those in power, then there is no country but an anarchy. This is definitely evil.
Interesting list of political demons there. But let's return to our earlier story where a delegation dispatched by the Inspector General of Police, James Opombuenu, has arrived in Yendi to resolve the impasse between the Divisional Commander, ACP Peter Akora, and the Overlord of Dagwan. Irish youth in Yendi, with the overwhelming support of the Dagwan Overlord, last weekend attempted to attack the Yendi Divisional Commander for allegedly disrespecting the kin. According to the police, the timely intervention of the Divisional Crime Officer and the Divisional Bureau of National Investigations Commander averted otherwise what could have been a bloody situation. Let's take you there now for more on this. Journalist Stephen Zuri with mynewsghana.com has been following the story. He joins us on the line. Many thanks for your time, Stephen. So give us a background to this particular story.
Okay, so that was last weekend this incident started, and it looks like the Overlord had dispatched some persons to go invite the Divisional Police Commander over an issue. And he purportedly made some comments that were deemed disrespectful and leading to the youth trying to deal with him their own way. Subsequently, some other security officers, including the BNI director, and the crime officer were summoned before the Overlord, and he gave the divisional commander 24 hours within which he had to leave Yendi or incur their wrath. So subsequently, he was ushered out of the town, and as we speak, I'm told he's in the Accra, where he is scheduled to be reassigned to a different place.
Interesting, but I'm sure people would like to know or are curious about the kind of comments that the police commander may have made. Do we know exactly what he said?
Well, according to him, he was purported to have said who is the Yana and that sort. And the people deemed that as disrespectful, considering how they revere the king and somebody who is supposed to be a subject to the king making such a comments were very distasteful.
And I assume calm has returned to the area now?
Yeah, the place is absolutely calm. Everybody's going about his business as expected. And the delegation led by COP Kenya Boa just finished a meeting with the overlord. And from what I'm gathering from the despite, but with a condition that the banished divisional commander does not return as head of the police service here.
Very much. That's Stephen Zuri. He's a journalist with My News Ghana. Now, moving on, the Ghana Health Service says a total of 6 health workers have died from COVID-19 since the outbreak in Ghana 4 months ago. Director General of the service, Dr. Patrick Abuaji, at today's briefing on how Ghana is handling the pandemic, revealed that majority of health workers who were infected have now recovered, and the number of infections in the hospitals have significantly reduced. He attributes this to the provision of the needed logistics and PPEs.
With today's total cumulative count, as I always say, this is the total number of cases reported from the date we got the first case, which is the 12th of March. That comes about 26,125 positive cases. This cumulative figure includes about 10,465 cases, positive cases, from routine surveillance. That is the people who are sick and meet the case definition. Enhanced contact tracing, which are the contacts we follow, including at groups, contribute about 15,660 cases. We have so far conducted 39,491 tests since the beginning of our testing capacity. Of the 26,000 cases we have recorded so far, about 22,270 cases have recovered, which gives us a very high percentage that I'll give you to go on. Our total deaths still remain 139, accounting for 0.53% of cases. Most importantly, the number of active cases, which is the cases that we are currently managing, the number that should be of concern to all of us, is the 3,716 cases, who are the people who are sick in our treatment centers, in isolation centers because they are asymptomatic or have a mild case, or under home management because they meet the definition to be able to stay at home. We have in our facilities, our treatment centers, 25 critical severe cases, 8 of them are critical, and 4 are currently on ventilator. Because we are not able to do a daily count of the cases we test, we do a 7-day average, which gives us the real averages, the number of cases per day as we move on. You can see that as at towards the end of June, there was a steep rise. But in the last 1 or so weeks, we've seen a decline. We only see the better picture when all the backlog, which we started clearing last week, is completed. But I still expect that the chart is not going to rise up, but it will still see a downward trend, maybe not in the way that we are seeing. We are reporting today a total of 695 cases, I would say new cases that have the result the labs have released. These cases span across almost a 3-week period, which is from the 12th of June all the way to the 12th of July, with a peak on the 24th, 25th of June this year. So the total number of new cases is 695, spanning over a period. We're hoping that by next we would have been able to clear backlog and be able to give a real, within 48 hours data. Of the number of the new cases came from 52 districts and 7 regions across the country, which means that 9 regions did not report a case. Greater Accra accounted for 405 new cases from 17 districts. Most of the cases were from Iowa West, and that puts a clarification on the Iowa West. Iowa West was where we have the hotels for quarantine, and most importantly, that is where Hohoe tests are done, and they've been allocating that to the district, so they may be coming from other districts. On our system, we know the details, but from the software, that is, it gives us as if it's Iowa, so it's a hotbed, so it's not. That's why it's painted red. Ashanti reported 205 new cases, 19 districts of the 43 districts in Ashanti, with the majority of them coming from Kumasi Metro, Kwadaso, and Asemampong. Eastern region had 36 new cases from 6 regions. Most of them came from Kwahu South. Western region had 16 new cases from 2 districts, mainly from Takwa and Swaim. Volta region reported 16 new cases, 5 from 5 districts. Western North, 16 cases from 2 districts. Upper West, 1 case from Lambusie, and so 9 regions did not report any case. These are Central, Upper East, Northeast, Western North, Savannah, Hafo, Northern, Oti, Bono, and Bono East. These were the regions, minus Western, the Western North shouldn't put there. They are the ones that reported cases. If you go into further details, as mentioned, in Greater Accra, Iowa West was the highest, but as explained, it's because of the location of the lab. Greater Accra Metro reported 46, Adentan 46, Korle 45, Ladi Kotipon 41, Tema reported 39. Mind you, these, like I said, are not recent cases. Some of them are coming from the backlog. But because of contact tracing, we need to be able to show and see those who have been exposed. Eastern region reported 6 cases from Kowa from Plain South, 1 from there, Abuakwa 1. New Jabin, that's Kofodia North, reported 8, Kowa from Plain 6, Kowa South 11, and Kowa East 8. West region 16 came from Takwan Shayim, that's 16, and Wasa East 3. The 1 case from Upper West came from Lambusie, as I mentioned earlier. Volta region reported 16 cases, 4 from Hohoe. North Town reported 4, Central Town 3, Afaja 2 South 2, and Kowa 1. Of the 205 cases from Ashanti region, Kumasi Metro reported 53, Kwadaso 31, Asante Mampong 24, Asukwa Municipal 14, Asante Akim 13, Achuma Wabija 12, Okurum 10, and Swami 10. So basically in that order, so that the largest came from this district that I've mentioned. Upper East, Northern, Northeast, OT, Western North, OT, Bono, Savannah, Bono East, and Ahafo did not report any case. Western North reported 16 cases from 9 from Yoso, and 7 from BBNE, Anyaso required. So the next chart will show, as usual, the number of cases that came in from in the graphical formats here. Yes. So the chart, the map on the left shows you the cumulative cases, as I've mentioned already. And the map on the right is giving you the regions, the active cases. You can see that Upper West, Upper East has no active case. Northeast has 1. Savannah 6 active cases. Northern region is reporting 94 active cases. Bono is 8, Bono 5, Ahafo has some recent news. We have about 80 active cases. Ashanti has 472 active cases out of the 5,000 cases reported since the beginning of the outbreak. Eastern has 101 active cases. Central region has 255 active cases, with Greater Accra leading with 2,460 active cases. So in terms of the distribution, the hotspots remains the same. Greater Accra contributes about 55% of all the positives ever reported. Ashanti, 21%, Western 8.4%, with Central coming with 4.3% of the total cases confirmed. We still have the same hotspots, and these are always shown to allow people to see that we need to be more cautious, we need to abide by the protocols, etc., to be able to look at that. We have the similar map in Ashanti that also shows the same areas of hotspots, not much. Based on the new additions, we can still see that the same areas that we are having challenges that continues to have. You can see the next chart gives us the active cases which are already gone through. You can see that of the 300,716 active cases, the majority are in Accra and Kumasi. And we have about 2 regions that currently have no active case at all.
You're still here on the Pulse with me, Araba Kumsin, and as you can see, I've done my face mask, which is a requirement for everybody when you have to adhere to the safety protocols, and also because I have a studio guest. I'll be introducing him very soon. But the Vehicle and Asset Dealers Association of Ghana is giving government a 1-month ultimatum to review or reverse the new customs bill, which seeks to ban the importation of salvaged and overaged vehicles. According to the union, the law is not favorable to the ordinary Ghanaian and will also push them out of business. The union at a news conference called on government to reverse its decision or face their wrath. The union believes the new policy will be a discouragement to local businesses. General Secretary of the union, Joshua Pukwajiman, is joining us in studio for more on this matter. Thank you for your time. So tell me, which aspects of this policy are you not comfortable with?
First and foremost, we want to thank you for the opportunity and to also greet your viewers. There are a couple of sections in the amendment bill which we are not comfortable with, and we think is a threat to the survival of our business. And one is the section 151 of the Act 891. And there we have the various definitions which are given to salvage vehicles, as well as the terms used in manufacturing and assembling vehicles.
Okay.
And so we have SKD, we have CKD, we have enhanced SKD, and all of these have been spelled out and defined properly as terms, okay, in the Act. However, on the part of the Vehicle and Asset Dealers Union of Ghana, when I say that, I mean the car dealers union in the country, we deal basically in the salvage vehicles. But when it comes to the law, with the newly passed one, there's nothing like definition as to what salvage actually means and the types of salvage vehicles we do have. But however, the law just skews it and then place every salvage vehicle under an umbrella salvage and terms it as wrecked and destroyed, which is not so.
I see. But have you forwarded these concerns to the sector minister or whoever is putting together this policy, even as it's being amended? Who have you, forwarded your concerns to?
As a matter of fact, since the drafting stages of the policy, through the parliamentary stages to the passing out of the bill, we have been part of this process all this while. But what needs to be stressed and emphasized here is the fact that our concerns were not, and input were not considered. We were promised of our inputs and our concerns, but when the bill was passed out and we happened to chance on and read, we realized that all the inputs that we made were not considered in there.
I see, that's interesting.
Sure.
You've been with them at the drafting stage.
Exactly.
And up until the point that the law was passed, your concerns were not included.
As a matter of fact, as we speak, the last time we met with the ministry was on the 30th
that's June.
Yeah, June.
Okay.
That was the last time we had a meeting with the Ministry of Trade and Industry.
Right.
And they can confirm to the fact that we have a written document of our input suggestions with them.
I see. So one of the concerns that many people feel that you have with this policy, especially with the entry of your competitors, and by competitors I mean, you know, foreign companies, car manufacturing companies who are entering the market. They say that you do not want to engage in any form of competition, and which is why you are putting blocks in the way to prevent this policy from being rolled out. How do you respond to that?
Well, as a matter of fact, we want to put on record as Vehicle and Asset Dealers Union of Ghana that under no circumstances, through our dialogue with the ministry, have we opposed the coming on into the industry, these foreigners to assemble cars here under no conditions. All that we asking for is a level playing field. The policy which is being developed, okay, as well as the act which has been passed, we seek that it will protect both stakeholders within the frame of the automobile industry.
And you think that as it stands,
they are being
it's
unfair
not protecting
at all. They are, it's one-sided, because all the incentives that we're talking about, all the incentives that has been spelled out in the act, displaced by us. And it makes us aware that it is one-sided. For instance, we know that they are being granted rebate on fully built units in case they import fully built unit. They have that rebate, and they have tax holidays up to 10 years. Okay, they are not paying duty on the cars they bring in, or even the CKDs on the SKDs. However, we are made to pay. We don't have issues with that, because that has been a small way of contributing to the development of the country. And so we have no issue. However, if the ground is not that level for us, we don't expect this act to come at a time where we are paying duties already, and then you want to increase the duties we're paying already on these cars, and go further on to ban the cars or the products which you know we're dealing. That is not fair. It means that we are being kicked out, and the foreigner comes in and controls what we have toiled and preserved jealously over the years.
But how do you respond to those who say that this may be a way of government's way of sanitizing the industry?
I want you to come again on that one, sanitizing as in how? Because,
well, they want to make
because if you want to sanitize the industry, I would want you to come up with whether you're talking about the health implications or you're talking about which side. Because all this while, car dealers have been bridging that gap of 90,000 importation of vehicles yearly into the country. According to the records...
When you say they are bridging the gap, what exactly do you mean?
According to the records, cars, 100,000 pieces of cars are imported into the country annually. And out of this 100,000, 90,000 of them are being imported into the country by us. It's only 10% of that whole thing that these dealers bring in. I mean, the foreign dealers bring in. And so imagine that there was nothing like that importation of 90,000 vehicles into the country, hence making it 100,000. Well, who will fill the gap? Who will bridge that gap? Who supply the remaining to make sure the demand is being met in the country? And we have been up to the tax all these years. And as a matter of fact, it's become so attractive in the country. And
what has become so attractive?
I mean, the sale of automobile. And it's all because that we took it upon ourselves, not with the help of any government or with the help of any other body, but as individuals to make sure we import cars into the country to satisfy the needs and the wants and to present to the customer that kind of variety.
I see. Interesting. So what's the implication, or what implication do you see this having if indeed the government does not amend the law as you are seeking, or amend it to reflect, you know, the concerns that you had raised earlier as it was being drafted?
Currently, Vehicle and Asset Dealers Union of Ghana is made up of a membership of not less than 7,000 across the country. And these are members, you know, there's freedom of association. And so these are members who have opted out freely to be part of us. There are others who are not even under the union. Okay? So we're talking about those people, plus their families and their dependents, as well as the value chain that we have. The value chain that we have, we talk about sprayers, we talk about straighteners, mechanics, air condition technicians, we have auto electricians, even to the extent of having tow drivers who tow our various cars from the port to the various garages we want to fix these cars. Not to even mention Swami Magazine, Kokompe, Abusioka, and the people who are there who are solely dependent on the importation of these vehicles. And so the impact will be very great.
I see. Interesting. So what action is the association going to take in light of these concerns that you're raising? For now, since the draft stage, as I said, we're being patriotic citizens because we haven't been against the introduction of these assemblies, and so we were listening to all that they had for us. We followed out through the procedure and the process. But we have realized that all this while, our concerns have not been heard and they haven't been considered. Right. And so we needed to come out because the law which is being passed is for the people of Ghana. And if you've passed the law and the people are saying it is not to their benefit and it's a threat to the survival of their means of living, then I think we have to look at it again. And besides, not all Ghanaians will be able to support the purchase of brand new cars. Because some of the lower and the middle classes in the economy, I don't think their salaries and wages will be able to support the servicing of a loan for a brand new car. And so we have come out this time around. We want the general public to hear of it. And then since it's not a decision which when taken will just impact on VADAC as a union, but has a lot of value chain dependents that will also lose their jobs. It's better we come up this time around, make it known to all of us, and it's up to us as a people in the country to take a decision on this one. All right. Thank you so much. That's Joshua Opokwajima, right? Yes, please. Secretary of the Vehicle Asset Dealers Association. Thank you very much for your time. Let's move on to COVID issues because we're in an era of COVID, obviously. Another final year senior high school student has died. But the Ghana Education Service says the institution should not be blamed for the death of the student. The mother of the guy, of the student of the Juraman Senior High School in the Nzima East District of the Western Region, is blaming school authorities for the death of her son. We'll be bringing you details of this after this break. You want to stay for it. Don't go away. You're welcome back to The Pulse, and this is your election headquarters. Now, registration has been slow in most registration centers we visited in the Techiman South constituency of the Bono East region, as only 28 people have registered as of noon today. Now, at the Kenten DHHS registration center, in the DA Primary 3 Registration Center, which has an average of 160 registrants per day, only 38 people had been registered as at 11:30 a.m. Registration officers believe most of the people in the electoral area have been registered, hence the slow pace of the exercise this morning. It's been largely calm in about 5 registration centers we visited so far, with several empty chairs. Now, security analyst Colonel Festus Abwaje, retired, is worried the reluctance of the police administration to prosecute people for the numerous violent incidents being recorded across registration centers should be a cause for concern. He told Roland Walker on the AM show, failing to bring the perpetrators to book can only jeopardize the peace in the run-up to the general elections in December.
I think we playing with fire as a nation. You see, Ayawaso West Wogon is not too far away in the recent history. There are a couple of lessons that we should have learned. One of these questions is, what do we consider to be a ballot center or a registration center? Is it only the small area that is marked with tapes, where you have the officials and the registration equipment and logistics? Or does a ballot center or registration center include the whole queue that people have joined from their homes in order to come and exercise their franchise? See, the argument of the EC that, and I want to believe that that is the mentality of the police, that when they deploy their men and women, they are only responsible for that small enclosure. And anybody else who left their houses with the sole purpose of coming to register, if the queue is 300 meters, 400 meters, 500 meters, because they have not reached that enclosure, they are not part of the ballot center. Now, that definition needs to be revised. The only reason why we leave our houses to go to register is to go and register. And our presence starts when we join the queue. The moment we join the queue, it is a responsibility of the EC with the Electoral Security Management Team to ensure that all of us are safe. The other picture I get from what the police officer said is that his men arrived. Now, if he had the men on standby at the station, why were these men not deployed in force to the respective centers under his control? We need to, yes, we must maintain reserves. That is a principle of operations. But there is no point in keeping the bulk of your men away from the center. And then in the event of confusion, you then rush them to the place. Probably the most worrying observation is that the political vigilantes are well and alive. The Act 999, which said by that act they had been disbanded, it's only in name or in word. In practice, we did not disband them. We proscribed them. We outlawed them. We should have gone through certain mechanisms, steps, concrete steps, to ensure that those groups listed in the Act, 27 of them, were physically dismantled, together with their command and control networks, the infrastructure, the weapons and equipment accounted for and handed over to the state, and then some other rehabilitation measures to ensure that those men and women who are members of these groups are found some economic livelihoods. We didn't do any of these, and we thought that by merely passing an act, we had disbanded vigilante groups. The few incidents that we've had show that vigilante groups are still around. And if we don't take steps now to make sure that we address the threat that they pose, I think come 7th December, there might be a bigger worry for the nation.
Now, on his part, Chairman of the Christian Council, Reverend Dr. Paul Boafo, said the parties need to adhere to the laws of the country and not flout them.
They have to follow and go by the standards of the ruling party and what they are expected to do in all these activities. And sometimes it cripples them. It puts them in a very tight situation where coming outright and pointing the wrongs within the parties becomes very difficult. Just as the mediators, as my good friend said, we should play our role such that you are not tagged as supporting or condoning and conniving with whoever is in power. And the opposition should also be seen to trust you that this is what is right that you have to do. But sometimes it puts them in a very tight situation where we all see that, well, they should have pointed out, they should have mentioned names, they should have gone straight forward to say that this is the thing. They wait until people are in opposition come out to demand justice before some of these things are mentioned, which is not the right thing to do. If we want to be fair, then we should go straight and point out the wrongs. In fact, if we are pointing out wrongs, we should not be afraid to point it out, because wrong is wrong. We cannot just gloss over them. These are the things that we need to be doing, and that is what will make them independent, and then they could be fair to all parties who are engaged in these things. In any way, we don't want these things to happen at all. So how do we address it? Please let us go the right way. Tell whoever is wrong, whether in power or in opposition, let us be straightforward and tell them so that we can move on as a nation in peace.
Now, Colonel Festus Abuache also said that it is untenable the reasons the Electoral Commission is giving to how the number of people registered in some centers in the Ashanti region were bloated.
Comments will relate to the responsibility of the EC to ensure that this process is successful, strictly in accordance with the letter and the spirit of our electoral laws. Now, unless the EC takes that responsibility, it's not going to succeed. So even the security issues that we are raising fall at the doorstep of the EC. Because the EC, with my limited understanding of the security architecture around elections management, is the head of all of these bodies. I would wish to suggest, like Odeo has said, that the EC gives periodic reports, briefings, updating the entire nation on how the process has been going, what problems it has identified, and what measures it is putting in place to address those issues, especially the infractions. There's one example, I stand to be corrected, but in the media, there was a report about very huge discrepancies in the numbers registered as accounted for by a political party and the EC's own numbers. So we're talking of 7,000 now becoming 20-something thousand. You see, and I don't understand how the EC can say that this was an error. Even if you play around with the numbers, 7,000, you don't get from 7,000 plus to 24,000 or thereabout, or from 5,000 to 14,000. Some of these episodes now get people to think that there is an agenda that is being set. You see, and it is the responsibility of the EC to ensure that the truth comes out. Who falsified the numbers? And those people, if any, responsible for that must be dealt with. But lastly, let's remind ourselves that all of this is taking place in the age of COVID. And you would have expected that if nothing at all, the threat of the COVID would have put some fear in us. Now, all the infractions that we've seen, the altercations, the fiscals, and so on, are all enhancing the spread of the COVID. But at the end of the day, the state that allowed the process to go on must be the same actor that ensures that there is compliance with the protocols. In that respect, I don't think the state is doing very well, although not every registration center, has found itself in such circumstances. We should try and prevent a situation where after the process ends in early August, we then get a huge spike in the COVID cases. That is not what I think Ghanaians are looking for. That we sacrifice our lives just to go and register and not even be able to go and vote.
Okay.
And even if, I think these are the few remarks that I would wish to make at this point.
Now let's stay a while longer on the registration exercise, because the opposition NDC in the Hohoe constituency has condemned a series of violent incidents that have plagued the registration exercise there. According to the Hohoe NDC constituency chairman, George Bright Anibansa, the violent incidents perpetrated by thugs and agents of the governing New Patriotic Party, as he alleges, is building up tension and may lead to turmoil. He also alleged the busing of non-constituents to apply for the voters' ID there. We can listen to him.
The MPP started their violent activities in the present registration exercise at Alavanyo when the General Secretary of our party, the NDC, Honorable Johnson Asiedu Nketia, we all know him as General Mosquito, visited the constituency to monitor the registration process. They besieged Alavanyo Kweme when the General Secretary was paying a courtesy call on the paramount chief of Alavanyo traditional area to attack the NDC because one of their own was made to delete pictures of the General Secretary he illegally snapped. The phase 2 of the registration exercise was never done without these MPP thugs beating up our party agents and prompters at 2 different registration centers, Pentecost Church Polling Station and MAGHS School Polling Stations, both at Quetta, being Quetta, where our agents were attacked and beaten to pulp. It is very unfortunate that these attacks happen in the full glare of police officers who just looked on and found no reason to arrest these hoodlums. One of such backward events led to the closure of the school session at Quetta MAGHS, where final year classes was going on. It is clear that our brothers and sisters in the MPP do not want us to contest the leadership race in Hohoe constituency in peace. We have evidence that their agents, prompters, are armed with knives, acid in syringes, cudgels, bars of crocodile to use in attacking our supporters. A few days ago, their own evil plan backfired on them. One of their numerous busing activities resulted in the attacks, beating up one of their own, by name Kenneth Agama from Hohoe. Kenneth Agama is one of their organizers involved in the mobilization of illegal busing of some unsuspecting youths from Hohoe to come and register onto the electoral roll of our constituency. We consider these happenings to be a dent on the image of our constituency. In all this, the police have not been proactive in arresting even a single soul because of order from above. We call on the leadership of Ghana Police Service in the Hohoe Divisional Command to investigate, arrest, and prosecute the perpetrators of these brutalities and heinous crimes against innocent citizens of Hohoe constituency. By this press statement, we are calling on those being bused to Hohoe to stay away from the registration exercise at Hohoe for their own safety. We say for their own safety, not because we will attack them, because they themselves will beat them just as they've beaten their own, as I have enumerated. NBC will not touch anybody. We are law-abiding citizens. We are also, by this press statement, calling on the chiefs and elders, CSOs, religious leaders, opinion leaders within the whole constituency to speak out now against these brutalities being meted out to innocent citizens of Hohoe constituency. The loud silence constitutes an endorsement of the criminal activities and attacks on individuals within the Hohoe constituency. They must not delay any further, but to speak now before the attacks get to them. For it will be too late for them to act.
Our correspondent Fred Kwame Asare joins me via Zoom with some more on this particular issue. Fred, tell us about this situation. The constituency chairman talks about busing of people to the area, among other allegations. Tell us about it. What do you know yourself?
Well, the Hohoe constituency, I think, is one of the constituencies that people are looking at in the Volta region as far as the 2020 general elections are concerned. It is the area where the energy minister, John Peter Murray, is contesting a former MCE, Professor Margaret Kweku. John Peter Murray is seeking to make history to wrestle the seat from the NDC. The NDC has actually occupied this seat since 1992. So the energy minister is seeking to wrestle the seat from the NDC this time around. But then, since the start of the registration exercise, there has been concerns from the NDC in the area that the NPP have been passing people to the area to register. And then in the process, at some of the police stations, some agents of the NDC attempted challenging people who they think are not constituents or are not residents, but then they were passed outside the Hohoe constituency to come and register. So in the process, some NPC agents also decided to step in and then to prevent the NDC agents from challenging those people who they think are not constituents from Hohoe. So this somehow resulted in scuffle and then disturbances at some of the police registration centers. The MAJHS at B Delta is one example where an NDC agent wanted to challenge one applicant, but then the NPP agent didn't allow this. So it resulted in some misunderstanding, and then there was some scuffle there, and then it also led to the closure of the school on that day. So the NDC is saying that this, among others, are what the NPP is doing in the constituency, and then they are not very much happy with the development. To add to that, they also mentioned that there have been busing of people outside the Hohoe constituency to the area to come and vote. There are videos circulating where it counted about 5 coaches, 5 SPC intercity coaches around Beledu Bogame. They mentioned that this were some of the people that were bused outside the constituency to come and register. They also added that when the incident happened, the violent incident, when they happened, they approached the police and then report the police. But then the police have not made any arrest to date. They said they have reported a couple of incidents to the police, but then none of the incidents or none of the police didn't act on any of the reports they lodged with them. So they are calling on the police to step in and then make the appropriate arrest persons that they reported to them and then also prosecute them. So basically, this is what is happening in the Hohoe constituency. But then generally, the registration exercise, as you say, has been ongoing peacefully, and then also majority of the people have already registered. So if you visit some of the centers today, you realize that the places are less busy as compared to when the exercise started.
Fred, I'm interested, I'm curious about what the MPP has been saying in response to these allegations against them. Obviously, we've been hearing a lot of these allegations and counter allegations. What's been the MPP's response to these allegations?
Well, at the moment, the MPP has not officially responded to these allegations of violence and embarrassment. But then I take some information where I had explanations that some of these constituents, or the constituents that are being alleged to be passed outside the area to come and register, are actually residents or natives of the Hohoe constituency, but just that they live outside the constituency. So they this time around realized that it's time for them to come back home, come and register, and then participate in the exercise, the general election. However, they don't have means of transportation. So it is the party that is mobilizing the transportation for them, then bringing them down to come and register. To add to that, there are also some information that the NDC has realized that it has killed people of Hohoe, and then also people are gradually moving from the NDC to the NPP, where they believe that the NPP parliamentary candidate has a developmental agenda, or a good developmental agenda for the constituency, and for that matter, he's development oriented. They mentioned that they have mobilized the construction of a stadium in Hohoe. They have also mobilized for some roads to be constructed in the municipality, and then also provided street lights in the entire municipality, among others. So the NDC is saying that the NDC realizing that the state is staring them in the face in 2020. That is how come they are targeting them with a violent attack, so that in case they eventually or they lose the general elections in 2020, they would mention that the NPP won the elections through vote. So basically, that is what has been happening. But then, like I said earlier, the NPP has not officially responded to the allegations. I am told there will be a press conference tomorrow to address the issues raised by the NDC.
All right, Fred Kwame Asare is our Volta regional correspondent with those details. You're still here on your election headquarters. Now, this morning, the Minority Women's Caucus in Parliament paid a visit to NDC running mate, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. Parliamentary correspondent Joseph Okugapo was with them. He will join us shortly. First, though, listen to Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman.
My daughters, I think most of you, my sisters, my friends, my sons, we don't go without you. You are all part of this. When we talk about the youth, we are talking about the men and the women. The time will come for me to make my maiden statement, and then maybe we'll all have a sense of where we are coming from. Today, I will not go ahead of myself. I just want to thank you, and I want to recognize the work that you do. The minority in Parliament is like the minority of the minority, and yet look at what they do. They get those done because they are women. The women organizer and her group in the regions, in the districts, right down to the branches, and even further down. We know the work they do. We want to encourage them to do more. I have the enthusiasm that has greeted the decision of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. Yes. It's not lost on any of us. I urge that we turn that enthusiasm into reality. Yeah. And we all know we can. We can. Yes, we can. Yes. Hohoe have bothered to come. Where are they? I want them to come and stand by me. Not because I don't like the others. No.
We understand, Mommy.
Thank you very much. I want you to know that you have proper names. Your name is not Kayeye. You have proper names. You deserve the respect like everybody else. Don't allow anyone to disrespect you. That's all I want you to say. Without you, our society will not be what it is. Believe that whatever you are doing in whatever category is as important as at any level. So I just want to tell you, thank you very much. Be confident in yourself. If you didn't get there, make sure your children do. Thank you very much.
So let's go to my colleague Joseph Opoku-Gapo, who was with at that event earlier today. Joseph joins us via Zoom. Hello, Joseph. How are you? Good to see you again. Joseph, you would have to unmute your audio.
That is always a big deal.
There's always a technical challenge when it comes to these things. But tell us, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, she's not been outlawed yet, and yet the Parliamentary Minority Women's Caucus decided to, hold this event. What was the purpose of the event?
And so it was a courtesy call on her to congratulate her on her appointment and nomination as the NDC's running mate going into the 2020 elections. And so just to tell you a bit of the backstory in relation to that, at a point in time, there was the contemplation as to whether the media should actually be allowed in to the conversation because they were hesitant about her saying anything publicly when she's not exactly been outlawed. But essentially, the Minority Women Caucus in Parliament, led by Comfort Doyle, who is actually the MP for Adan, as well as the NDC women organizers from the various regions, led by Dr. Hannah Bisiu, who is the national women's organizer, and a number of other women, including the KIAs, as well as female parliamentary candidates, including that of the Ketu South, as well as a number of others, including Dr. Zanetta Rawlings, who's actually the MP for Clotikole, were all part of the delegation that paid a courtesy call on her, essentially to congratulate her and to assure her that she can count on their support, even as she partners John Mahama for the 2020 elections.
Joseph, there's one thing which caught my attention that she said. She said that the headquarters that we know as KAE should not be referred to as KAE. Did she explain why?
Well, essentially, she was asking them to step up and demand the respect that's due them. She makes the point that she thinks they have names that they can be called instead of them being referred to as far as their profession is concerned. And to a certain extent, she appears to be convinced that referring to them as KIAs is not exactly a good thing, and that they are ordinary members of the society who have names, and that it would be good for them to be called by the names that they actually know. They had their own thoughts as well, even after she was actually called in by Professor Jenan Opoku-Agyeman, and they were told to step up and defend themselves and all. You recall that there had been an issue with them being referred to in comments by the MPP General Secretary John Bwedu, and him making the point that Professor Jenan Opoku-Agyeman is so unpopular that when she steps out there, these are the only people who would actually wave at her, the KIAs, I mean. They had some responses to that even after they met Professor Jenan Opoku-Agyeman, indicating that this particular comment is actually encouraging them as women who are headquarters to really, really support Professor Opoku-Agyeman's candidature and campaign for her and ensure that she becomes vice president of the country so she can help them deal with issues having to do with loans that they need to set up businesses and also support them properly with their children's education and all. But in some way, they've also been demanding an apology from John Bwedu as far as those comments are concerned. And a number of the women who are here in Parliament who were part of that meeting actually support the demand for an apology. And in fact, soon after the meeting with Professor Nana Opoku-Agyeman, Dr. Hannah Bisiu, who is the NDC Women's Organizer, addressed the media briefing at which she took on a number of the NDC, the NPP figures who've been criticizing the nomination of Professor Jenano Pokwajiman and insisting that women deserve a lot more respect. And for her, the NPP is panicking following the nomination of Professor Jenano Pokwajiman. And in her words, they haven't seen the worst of the panic yet because they are convinced she will lead them to victory and become vice president of the country. And that's how come she thinks the NPP is not happy with her nomination, including her criticizing the majority leader, that Osei Mensah Bonsu and all.
Right. And Joseph, we do know that you're still in Parliament. What issues have come up for discussion on the floor?
Let me begin with what's been happening on the floor, and then we discuss what's been happening right on the precinct and what other MPs have been saying. On the floor, there was a statement from Osei Mensah Bonsu, the majority leader, on issues having to do with what is called Private Members Bill. As it exists today, the only legislation that's brought to Parliament for approval, and even when it comes to amendment of the Constitution and all, solely has to do with things that the executive arm actually brings to Parliament and laid on the floor by one minister or the other. But there's been a push by Professor Michael Quay to ensure that MPs can introduce legislation that can eventually become law in the country on their own without it coming from the executive arm of government. And so the majority leader indicated that the work to ensure that has progressed very steadily, and that there's been a reference to the Constitution and Legal Affairs Committee to draw out modalities that will ensure that sometime soon, even before this particular 7th Parliament comes to an end, we can see a situation where an individual MP can introduce a bill to Parliament, get it approved, and it becoming law, without what we've seen over the years, with no MP doing that apart from legislation that's only introduced by the executive arm of government. And that announcement by the majority leader actually drew a lot of comments from both the majority and the minority, who think that it's about time that MPs are able to introduce bills which would eventually become law. So that's what the House has been debating. A while ago, MPs were called back in after like a 2-hour break because they need to deal with the lands bill and get it approved. On the presence of Parliament, there's been reactions to, if you recall, the laying out of the details of why the Supreme Court judges decided to dismiss the NDC's case against the Electoral Commission sometime last month, and the Supreme Court indicating that they think that the birth certificate cannot be used as a document for identification. Well, lawyer Roxin Nafiamapo, who is a member of the Constitution and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament and also the MP for South Dai, thinks that looking at the details of the judgment, the reasoning of the judges is actually something that he says is shallow. He thinks they are wrong. He thinks they've erred. And he makes the point that from time immemorial, the birth certificate has been a document for identification. And so he thinks that it's out of place, that the court is now coming to the conclusion that it can be used as a form of identification because it would have a lot of consequences, looking at the fact that people have acquired their passports with their birth certificate and a number of other documents with their birth certificates.
All right, Joseph, thank you very much for that update on what's happening on the floor of Parliament as well as the precincts of Parliament. This is the polls here on the Joy News channel. And moving on, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought on many attendant issues, including the need for a safe and clean environment, as well as proper hygiene and sanitation practices as countries move into lockdowns with restricted movement and access to critical goods and services. International NGO World Vision Ghana has been monitoring the situation in Ghana and observes waste management during this pandemic poses a significant challenge to environmental health. We'll be bringing you more details on this after the break. Don't go away. Thanks for staying with us. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought on many attendant issues, including the need for a safe and clean environment, as well as proper hygiene and sanitation practices as countries move into lockdowns with restricted movement and access to critical goods and services. International NGO World Vision Ghana has been monitoring the situation in Ghana and observes waste management during this pandemic poses significant challenge to environmental health. Now, Atta Ahin is the WASH coordinator for World Vision Ghana. He joins us via Zoom for a conversation on this particular matter. Also on the phone is Dr. Justice Youngson, who is the General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. Good afternoon to you, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good. You can hear me. Now, tell us more about, I'm starting with you, Mr. Atahin. Tell us more about your observation during this COVID-19 pandemic as far as environmental health and practices are concerned.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to your cherished viewers. Let me say that, well, we have been pleasantly surprised. Certain things have been done well, obviously because of the pandemic. We see an increasing momentum in trying to deliver improved sanitation in various parts of the country. I mean, if you consider the fact that there was a massive cleanup exercise across the country, if you consider the fact that there was a disinfection exercise at the markets and all places, I think that by and by, we are beginning to wake up to the realization that improved sanitation saves lives, improved sanitation promotes health, improved sanitation is wealth, and improved sanitation is well-being. And I'm happy that government is beginning to wake up to this realization. I think that we could have done this much earlier, but better late than never. I think that we are doing quite well. Plus, citizens' attitude towards hand washing, especially. For me, I think these are quite impressive, and we need to sustain the gains.
But let's narrow it down to two major issues first. That is waste management. And I'm talking about refuse gathering and refuse collection. Tell us your impressions about that.
Well, I think, and I've always held the view, that this is an industry that has not received adequate support. And especially around this time when waste can no more be handled in a business as usual manner, I think that the waste management companies or the industry needs to receive a lot more support, because now you are dealing with biomedical waste, you are dealing with all kinds of waste which are hazardous. And I think that this is the right time for government to provide these industry players with some fiscal incentives and other support. Well, the president, as part of the launch of the National Sanitation Campaign, promised to provide them with some fiscal incentives and also support them to be able to acquire state-of-the-art equipment. Because now this is a public good, and once we import a truck for waste management, you can't use it for any other thing. And so I think that there's that strong call on government to support these players so that waste is treated safely and does not become a source of, infection to citizens.
Have on the line with us Dr. Justice Yankson. He's General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. Doc, from where you stand, how do you think medical waste is being treated?
Well, let me just say that I also add on to or re-echo the comments by my colleagues that when it comes to general waste management, COVID has actually brought a bit into the limelight in terms of hygiene fine, but the general waste management bit, we still haven't actually done much. And I think as a country, we have paid lip service to this for far too long. There have been political promises by all governments, including this current government and president. But unfortunately, Accra or Ghana hasn't become the cleanest. And that is still a source of worry because beyond COVID, it still gives us a lot of problems at the health facilities, i.e. people coming in with all kinds of preventable infections, which can actually be linked to our dirty environment and our approach to doing things. But specifically on medical waste, it is a subject that I think is not far-fetched from the general. Reason being that some facilities may have what you may describe as something close to standard or internationally acceptable means of disposing medical waste. But for a large majority of facilities, especially outside the cities, most of their medical waste disposal is just something that does not meet the required standard. And we will need to work on that as well, just like the general waste management.
Let me put that same question to you, Mr. Ahen. How do you think, biomedical waste is being managed? Are you satisfied with the way it's being managed? We have a lot of PPEs, face masks, gloves, all of that being disposed of. How do you think that is being managed?
Anticipate this one. And so we have not made the necessary investments to deal with it. And that is the stark reality. We do not have the infrastructure which is developed to be able to deal with this because it's a new thing. But thankfully, private sector operators have already invested quite heavily in this area in terms of the treatment, the recycling, and the management of waste. And so we have a number of compost plants, we have a number of recycling plants, both in Accra and in Kumasi, which we can take advantage of.
Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. Let's move on to that story that my colleague Joseph Opoku-Gapo alluded to earlier. And the Supreme Court has, in a unanimous decision, ruled that the birth certificate is not proof of citizenship. The court also says that the certificate is not a form of identification. The document is currently used as proof of citizenship in application for Ghanaian passports. But the Apex Court compares it to the NHIA card, which it rejected prior to the 2016 election and concluded that, quote, the birth certificate is actually worse, end quote. This is contained in the full written judgment of the court in a case filed by the opposition NDC and private citizen Mark Tishibanson. The court on June 25th dismissed the request to stop the EC from compiling the new register of voters or allow the use of birth certificates and the current voter's ID card. As you know, the court deferred its written judgment to July 15, which was just yesterday. Private legal practitioner Ernest Kofi Abuchi shares these views on the ruling.
Now, let me just say, first of all, that I think the decision is rooted in pragmatism, the decision itself. So this is a decision whose outcome may appear to be informed by pragmatic considerations. When the voters ID, when the original voters registration was adopted, indeed when the Constitution was adopted, I don't think the framers contemplated that a time will come where forensic and biometric registration may be invented, or so to speak, and may justify or necessitate and render outmoded a previous register that may have been adopted. I don't think that was, and I think therefore that may have been overtaken by time, which has created the situation we have today. But the reasons that are contained or were contained in the decision, the reasons that have been given by the court.
Of course, we'll be dealing a lot more on this particular matter in our subsequent bulletins, particularly our Prime News Bulletin at 7 o'clock. But that's how we wrap up the show today. I'm Arba Kumsin. I sat in for your regular host, Gifty Ando-Apia. She's back tomorrow. Join us same time tomorrow. But for more news, log on to myjoyonline.com.